remember. That's really.
You actually got one in. I totally remember it. Like very vividly. And if Nancy remembers it, and I do, it happened.
Or happens. Okay, you guys. I would like to welcome everyone to the meeting of the Canyons Board of Education. Today is February 21st, 2023. We're meeting at the district office located at 9361 South, 300 East in Titan, Utah. The first item on the agenda is, let me move my computer. The 2023 legislative update, and Charles Evans, Director of External Relations, will be presenting that to us. And I need to excuse Mont Milligan, board member, and also Susan Edwards needs to be excused. So we'll turn the time over to Mr. Evans.
Thank you. Appreciate you excusing Susan. We've got a lot going. She is sitting in house ed right now, and we've had a very busy day, and obviously going to have a very busy week. So I hope I could remember. I'm going to rely on you guys to ask me questions. So I guess the most important thing I can share with you guys today is they came out with the final revenue projections today, which is the numbers that they will budget on. And while it was announced in both bodies that the numbers were flat, they were flat overall, but the education fund, which I will still persist in calling it the education fund, even though they don't do that anymore, was down $115 million in ongoing money and $115 million in one-time money from their November projections. The general fund was up a little more than that, and the transportation fund was down a little bit less. So overall, it balanced out. But from our point of view, the projections weren't as good as we had hoped. And I can't decide. Usually that's a bad thing. I think it is a bad thing, but it does put a little bit of interesting pressure on the legislature on their what I see as their two top priorities anyway. They want to do a huge tax cut, and they've already passed this voucher bill. And I think they have, reading between the tea leaves, I think a number of legislators have received quite a bit of blowback on the voucher bill and the way it was done. And the way the thing they need to do and is they're telling their constituents that this isn't going to hurt public education. And the only way for them to prove that is for public education to have a nice funding year. And so with the education fund being down $115 million ongoing, and then wanting to do a big tax cut, it's going to be interesting to see if they don't, because I can't remember the time in the years that I've done this where they haven't met or exceeded the recommendations by the Education Sub-Appropriations Committee. They've always added just a little bit to it. Yeah, I've never seen them not hit that number. And so I'll be very surprised in a year like this if they'd be willing to do that, even with these numbers being lower than was expected. So I don't know how that will affect the tax cut. I assume nobody's told me this, and I don't know, and maybe it's just wishful thinking on my part, which I usually am paranoid thinking at this time of the year. And that's usually the safest bet. But I assume that they won't be able to do as much of a tax cut as they want to do, but we'll see. I mean, we'll probably start hearing some stuff about that in the next 48 hours, but I haven't heard anything as of yet. So that's really all I know about the budget. Did you hear anything, Leon? Do you have anything you want to add?
Those same numbers? No, I haven't heard anything.
Let's see. So I think we're all up to date on the voucher bill. They're still running. They have one cleanup bill that's working its way through the system, it was stated by the House sponsor, there was, they did those special needs scholarship fund bill today while you guys were in closed session. And it came up in the course of that debate that those scholarships are subject to audit. The sponsor of the voucher bill said that there is another bill coming this session, which will add those audits to the Utah Fit scholarship as well. That was the very first that I've heard about that. So I haven't seen anything on that, but obviously I think that is a good idea. We'll just have to see what it is when it arrives. We're still fighting, or still, I shouldn't say fighting. We're still working on the school fees amendments bill. It's really a moving target. You know, one day it's got, you know, a certain amount of money in it that's going to be ongoing. And then the next day it's one-time money. And now it's not going to take effect until, you know, 2028. So trying to find the right subject and the right way to do that they can pass that bill. I think we've done a lot of work on that. I'm not sure with the way it keeps changing. I can't really get a fix on how hard it is going to be to kill. I think they tried to put one-time money in there, but so it would be easier pass this year, but that's a pretty difficult game to play up there. Everybody understands up there what one-time money means. You know, when you say you're funding it with $23 million, the next question is that ongoing or one time? Everybody knows how that goes up there. You know, maybe you can fool some of your constituents that way, but not very many people at the legislatures. I'm optimistic one day and pessimistic the next day on that bill. I hesitate to predict what will happen. Representative Strong has worked very hard on this bill, and he's not been easy to pin down, and it's something he obviously cares a lot about. And I think everybody knows Representative Strong does represent part of our district, so we work closely with him as we can, but it's obviously something he feels strongly about. We've been working with Representative Birkeland on her bill, the criminal investigations of school employees. That bill was amended today to incorporate the language that we suggested, making it clear that if we have an employee that is under a criminal investigation, we complete our own investigation and terminate that employees, or the employee either resigns or we terminate their employment, that we don't have to keep paying them through the length of the criminal investigation, which was a little unclear the way the bill was originally drafted. We think that that's been eliminated. Now that bill passed out of Senate committee, and I would look for it to pass the Senate sometime this week. The bill that would allow referendums on tax increases has been circled at the top of the House third reading calendar. As it worked out, when we had our little weekly meeting up there this week, we had a chance to meet with that representative sponsor, who was Representative Jay Cobb, who represents Jordan School District. Learned in that meeting actually that Representative Cobb's daughter goes to Hillcrest. So even though he doesn't represent Canyons, we kind of claim him as one of our own. We'll remind you, which I already did before, that he was one of very few Republicans that voted against the voucher bill. And so that also took a lot of courage. And so we feel like we have a good working relationship with him, although he does feel strongly about this referendum. And so I have a feeling that we're probably done with that for this session, but that will come back from Representative Cobb and probably next session. And I think that given our conversation with him, I think we'll be one of the people he reaches out to work on. But I think we've made it pretty plain that without that 2/3 vote, you know, the way the legislature works, if you get a 2/3 vote, then it's referendum proof. We want the same thing for you guys. They're hesitant to do that because you guys are such a small body. They feel like it's an unfair advantage for you guys, but they do give, in certain circumstances, they do give the cities that same protection. And we're going to try to use that, whether it happens in this session or in a coming session, to argue that school boards deserve that that same type of protection. We'll see how that goes. The Education Entity Amendments Bill, which is the bill that would authorize these so-called micro schools. We temporarily killed that in the Senate today. You guys know that, remember that movie, The Princess Bride? It's not dead, it's mostly dead. The bill sponsor changed his vote towards the end. I didn't catch this until Nancy pointed it out to me. Changed his vote at the end to vote no, so that he could be on the prevailing side, which is you have to be on the prevailing side to make a motion to have a bill reconsidered. So that's a pretty clear indication that that's what his intention is. It failed on a 13-13 vote with 3 being absent. And so really it failed on a 14-12 vote. And you need, when a bill's up for final passage, you need a constitutional majority, which in the Senate is 15. So I looked at the 3 people who were missing. I have a feeling he can get one of those, but we'll see. I felt like, frankly, that we were the only ones working against that bill. But when I looked at the vote, it was pretty clear that other people were working against it too, but they're just doing it very quietly, I guess. And so I think, I don't want to say we're in good shape, but I think we're in pretty good shape on that. Even if he is able to get one more vote to flip, I think maybe we can get it somewhere else along the process. I was really nervous. I expected it based on the work that I had done on it to pass by about 20 votes today. So I was very pleased when I saw that. The full day K bill passed unanimously out of committee today. That is the other thing that could potentially be affected by this. I don't want to call it a shortfall. It's not a shortfall, but by the actual numbers being 115 million less than projected. So we'll have to see, but it did pass unanimously out of committee, and obviously, if executive appropriations decides to fund it, and I don't have any indication that they're not going to fund it, I don't think we'll have trouble passing that this year. And I'll leave it there and answer any questions that you guys have. I'm sure I've forgotten stuff, so don't hesitate to ask about anything.
So I know this past week, the constitutional earmark resolution change the amendment came out.
Yes.
As well as the removal of sales tax on food bill was substituted.
Right.
To make that bill subject to passage of, or the change in the Constitution. So
I haven't had a chance to speak with Representative about that, but Susan has. And so what I'm telling you is third hand from what Susan said. And I don't want to get you in any trouble, but she's very frustrated by that too. Her admonition to Susan was a lot of water left to go under the bridge, and there is. And so we'll have to see how that goes, but I'm sure, I saw that and I thought, well, of course, they're going to try to do that. It just makes it more difficult to defeat, but we'll have to see. I'm starting to wonder how much they're going to push that this year and maybe wait till next year in hopes that the scars that were created by this voucher bill might have healed a little bit more by the next session. Because they can't put it on the ballot till 2024 anyway, regardless of when they pass it. I'm like telling them, well, there's not even scars. Yeah, these are open wounds, people.
indeed.
Okay.
Did I cut you off, Nancy?
Any other
what the latest
questions
was.
or comments for?
My one question is on that House Bill 464. I know there's a few different versions. It's with the library materials and just
Yes.
HB 464 says to a standing committee. I asked you a little bit about that this morning. Any other news?
So we went to a meeting. There was a meeting called by the House Majority Leader on Friday. And because apparently, in addition to the ones we know about, there are other bills. He said 7. And his hope was that we could get them all read to what should be in a bill and run a bill.
Wow.
And the meeting was productive. I don't want to say that it wasn't productive, but that's not where the meeting ended up. And in fact, I don't think anybody agreed to combine anything into another bill. And so my expectation is that the bill that's sponsored by Representative Ivory, and I can't remember the number, will go forward and probably pass in some form, but I would look for that bill to change substantially as it moves through the process.
Okay, and then will you keep in contact with us? Because I have ideas about.
Yes. So that's not to say that that's the only bill, but that's the one that most likely to pass. And I think he is the one that's recognized in our legislature as being kind of the expert on that.
There's, problems with just trying to go to the USBA for every, there's some logistical things that would be very, very problematic.
That's what makes me nervous about
I'm sorry.
doing all this at the very end, because when you have these bills that are very process oriented, it's hard to communicate that when you get into a real crunch time, which we're entering into now.
Kind of are.
That this is a great idea, but the process won't allow, and trying to explain how these processes work to people who have never been involved in them becomes difficult. And I'm getting nervous that when they start cramming and jamming at the end, that's going to get lost in the shuffle, and we could get stuck with something that is not workable.
Yes, I am as well. Okay, and then another question on House Bill 477 with the all-day kindergarten. There are a lot of teachers that have been emailing me, teachers that are half-day kindergarten teachers that are unaware that part of the bill is that we would still provide half-day kindergarten for those parents who want that. So that's one thing I think that people on the Hill should know, is to make sure that that's very well communicated, because I think that's still a very prevalent concern that people don't understand how that works.
I think you're right. I think at the legislature, it's understood that it will be opt-in for the parents.
Yes.
Which will mean obviously that every school district, almost every school district, certainly any larger school district, will have students who don't opt into it, and therefore will need a half-day kindergarten option. And I will talk to Jeff and Kirsten about how the best way to communicate that to our teachers is. We don't want to get out in front of the board as to how you guys will do that or want to do that, but we're certainly willing to communicate to teachers that there will be half-day options for students, because I assume that we'll have a number of students who want half-day kindergarten. That is the expectation of the legislature and in the bill.
Yeah, great.
And I was just going to add on that. So yeah, the bill's pretty straightforward. Basically, it just provides the funding to be a full WPU if a student's enrolled in full day kindergarten. And then I think it leaves it up to the LEAs to kind of make that determination, but there is a requirement that half day is still available.
And I think the general public don't read the bills or see, because it is very straightforward. And so there's some generated concern that maybe we can alleviate before people start writing their representatives and don't really know what they're opposing.
Yeah, you can forgive anybody for making that mistake.
Yeah,
for sure. Especially teachers and parents.
Yeah.
It's hard to get that information out when you're 90 miles an hour up there.
Yes, absolutely.
Mrs. Oaks.
So where are we at with HB 344 on curriculum transparency? Aren't you sure?
Well, that's one of the rare successes we've had up there this year. But with only 26 votes in the House, I usually have a hard time remembering vote totals this long after they've happened, but we've had so many wins up there. I can still remember that when that was last week. I think it may be dead this session. But Representative Tusher is very tenacious, and we're watching it very carefully, but it would it would take some doing to undo that. And the closer you get to the end of the session, we're not quite that close, but the closer you get to the end of the session, when everybody else has got their own bill they're trying to pass and you've already had your chance, now you're trying to bring your bill back, people get frustrated with that. We're not quite there yet, but we will be soon.
Anything else? Mrs. Nybar?
Just for the general public, maybe explain why, because of course we like transparency. Just explain why that there were some things that were problematic for anyone who may be watching.
Well, we do like transparency, and I think that the case we made to the legislature is that we do like transparency, that we have a very transparent policy, and if we can do it better, please let us know. We're happy to make it as more transparent, but that was just a very onerous process that, in my opinion, would have taken the authority that resides with this board and given it to a group of parents who were not elected. And in the end, nobody represents our school district better than you guys. You guys were elected by our school districts, and no matter how many parents you or other people you would appoint to any kind of committee, they haven't passed through the test, the discipline of the ballot box the way you have. And I think in the end, that's what got that bill, an overly onerous process that delivered, it took power out of the hands of elected officials.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Evans. Thank you so much for all your work. Let's tell Susan, thank you too. I know you guys are going.
Obviously, it goes without saying, I want to thank Susan for all of her hard work. And she would have been here tonight, but we just had too much going on.
You guys are burning the candle.
Thank you so much.
Okay, we'll move on to item B, long range planning committee update by Mr. Leon Wilcox, business administrator.
Thank you, President Schill. Have to say I'm a little taken aback right now. I'm actually seeing McKay back there eating a taco and chips.
It's only veggies.
We went out to breakfast with McKay, a few weeks back, and he ordered an omelet with no eggs, no cheese. That is.
This is skillet. There's a bunch of potatoes. That's what I thought.
Thank you to our long range planning committee. We have a new member, so want to thank Amber, our holdover from the previous years, but also Amanda and Karen coming on. So we met last week. You, Rick, please chime in as we go through this, try to get through this pretty quickly. Met high level, just try to catch up the committee and some initiatives and hear everybody's initiatives as we move to look forward. We have lots of needs, not a lot of money. So that's some of the things that we talked about here as we try to move through and prioritize things moving forward and how to fund things moving forward. Is this list here, by no means is this inclusive, and by no means is this in order of needs either. But we've had field houses. We know the 5 high schools, 3 of them have the field houses through the new construction last few years. Corner and Jordan do not. See how we can get one at them. They're been very popular with the community and the students, coaches, everything there. Especially on days like maybe tomorrow where there'll be snow outside and cold. So we also know field upgrades. I'll always try to be the positive. I think our field district-wide are in pretty good shape, district-wide. All the improvements we've made, some big improvements at Alto, their baseball and softball field that haven't been done in over 40 years with sprinkler boxes and other safety concerns, but we still have the former Canyon soccer fields and the baseball and softball that have been an issue. That's a priority. A new tech center, that's a priority. Our tech centers, doesn't have much curb appeal and is, maybe not built for the 21st century. We know we got to upgrade that. Where does that be located at? And of course, the point, this is it looking out. They're moving. I live down that way, and you can see a lot of the buildings being demoed. We noticed that yesterday as my wife and I were driving around. But we know that's coming. Now it's still probably 4, 6, 8 years out before they actually have a place where we can build there, but we know that that's coming well. And then also looking at the tough one here, and that's our declining enrollment. We talked about that with house prices, family size, birth rate, everything like that coming. We know that we've produced some excess capacities. We'll get to those numbers here in just a minute. It should be noted, we put it on board docs. The legislative auditor's office goes out and audits all school districts. They try to do 1 to 2 a year. This last year, they did Salt Lake City, and the first thing they came back with as their top finding, their top priority was that district's operating too many schools under capacity. They have almost as many, about 19,000 students, almost as many elementary schools as we do. So that was their big finding there, their big issue there. It does take, every school has certain overhead costs. You gotta fund those regardless of the student enrollments there. So we'll have to make those, as we do project our enrollment to somewhat decrease because of those factors in the next few years, and we'll have to have those difficult discussions on how to proceed forward with that. Do we ever look at closing schools? That's going to be a tough one. Do we adjust boundaries, which is also tough? So both of those are difficult. If the schools are closed, what do you do with the vacant property? It's gone as well. One of the things we did discuss is possibly liquidating this piece. I think everybody knows this is the really last piece on the east side of Draper. It's up on 1700 east. That's over here, about 132nd, 36th in that range there. About 11.5 acres. Was bought by the old Jordan School District many years ago, well prior to the division, early 2000s. They thought they may need it for an elementary school site. We don't see that ever happening because we feel like we have enough capacity in our elementaries down there. But do we look at selling that and look at funding, using the proceeds to help fund those improvements we talked about at Corner Canyon? We can talk, we won't get into the value here in an open session. That's items we can discuss in a closed session. Same with C-Tech. You can see there, that's about on a little over 7 acres. The 5 buildings, 63,000 square feet in those buildings. We can discuss the value of that as well. You take those funds and look at putting that into a C-Tech center. You look at building something on site there as well. We talked capacity. So big thank you to Bob and Cindy Hanson. Don't see them here. So on the high school and middle school, the next slide, they've gone out and looked at the capacity of each school. We wanted them to do this because of the new, mainly the updates to Alta and the new Brighton and Hillcrest. You can see, I like to look at this far right corner column here, and that is where we are at capacity wise. Obviously, I like being up close to that 100%. That means we're utilizing our full buildings, being efficient. I'm not, they're a little over 100%, but you walk in these, I think it feels comfortable. Kids can still move. We still feel like it's safe. So that's, you can see there the capacity around that 2,200, and you can see our enrollment. I wanted to emphasize on these next 3 slides. This is next year's projected enrollment, not this year's enrollment right now. So it's what we project coming into these buildings next year. You can see, Jordan is down. Has had that, this area here has changed. Those of us who've worked here for 14 years notice that the area around us has changed a little bit, got more urban and suburban, if you will. So Jordan's capacity and enrollment is down, and enrollment has shrunk there over the last few years. Moving on, but still nearly 100% there. Moving on to our middle schools. Again, I want to point out Union. We're using the new Union building here. So that's its capacity. As you can see, again, the projected enrollment, where we're at with these here. You can see Eastmont's a concern, under half. Jordan and Union. And we'll have to see exactly what happens with the new Union. And we do have quite a few students who do permit out of Union, who went out the new building, may pull some back. Just have to see how that goes. You can see where Mount Jordan and Union are right there. Moving on, this will be a project for McKay and Alice. We're asking to do this upcoming summer. That is update our elementary capacity. This one has not been updated. Just give you this as a reference. I don't think it will change significantly these numbers here, but you can see where we're at there with, again, projected enrollment. Some getting down lower. You know, we need to look at if full day kindergarten probably goes. We need to adjust that column. I'll just have it straight K5. I think we need to look at getting rid of Head Start. We don't have that anymore. And DK. So this chart will change, but I think it gives us an idea of the ballpark we're going to be in, and that's 70-ish, 75% capacity, which I think we're all set and done there. Here's our projected enrollments. I put the full sheet out on Board Docs just so you can see it. The whole thing. I think it's important to throw out this for elementary. You know, we're in the 18-19 year, we're almost 15,000 students. And we're going to be about 1,500 down is what we're projecting for next school year. Again, this is housing and the birth rate just really catching up to us. And it's catching up in the other areas of the state as well. It's just not gaining, but we are feeling it here. High schools, still going to be pretty consistent. We see that trend going out. You know, charter schools don't have the same impact on the high school level. And, you know, as families get a little older, they can afford to live in our communities a little easier. So we see that numbers stabilizing, but also it should be noted that middle school going down, not the same rate as the elementaries, but a decrease there. Look at boundaries, you know, we won't get into boundaries because of time or anything, but there are some feeder patterns. You know, we don't have a true feeder system in the district. These are some things that we do know that we'd like to clean up that we have heard from parents about over the years. See those both high school and so the big one here, you know, just that's Jordan feeder of this area right here. Just not. It's going down in school-age children. That's tough. The other areas, we're somewhat projecting to be fairly static moving forward, but some decreases over time. One of the big things that's happened that really hasn't happened in the 14 years we've been in district is charter schools. You know, the charters we've had have always been there before the district was created. But we did have a big change this year, and that's with Beehive Academy. Of course, they did have a place over by, I'm gonna call it the old theater, Dollars Theater there. They did buy the Shopco building up on 94 South. And so they did go from 6-12 for years and years, high school level, to a whole K-12 program. And you can see what their October 1 enrollment was. You know, so they took 270 elementary kids. Not all from our district, but I think it's safe to assume that most were from our district. 6-12 has also gone up a little bit. I think that's probably a correlation between the two. Younger brothers go in there and the older brothers as well. So you can see the trend going forward there. What's happening there? Again, here's the Google map, and here's the pool up there on the other side of that Smith's, the old Shopco. You can see it's centered right there in several of our schools. So I tried to draw a line, but they don't, you know, see them really well. But here's the Willow Canyon. Here's Granite over here. Park Lane down here. You know, just off you have Quill Hollow, Brookwood and Silver Mesa, Albion. Then down here you have Eastmont, which just below that's Glacier. So you can see where it's located and probably pulling from each a little bit. So finally, just a few recommendations that we have. We'd like to, we recommend the committee hire a demographer firm to really check on the future forecast of housing, family demographics, birth rate, array of things within our district boundaries, and give us some long-term projections on how that's one. We want to continue to look at the feasibility studies of Eastmont, the needs there. We know we had the roof looked at last fall. That's about a $2.5 million. It does need to be replaced. A $2.5 million cost, what they quoted us last fall. We know there's issues with the elevator, big issues with the elevator. The whole reason we moved the floor is to look at the water underneath why it was coming up. So we still need to fix that. You know, we got water table issues underneath. We also need to look at East Crescent View for future options there. What can that be looked at? Is that a place for a tech center? Or did we look at moving it down there? We don't know yet. But just some feasibility studies there. And just, you know, the board may not know the last one here is, 12 years ago, it's been over 10 years ago, 11 years ago now, in 2012, we entered into lease agreements with Cottonwood Heights and Midvale City. The reason being, we had old schools there, the old Midvale Elementary on the Midvale site, the old Mountain View Elementary on the Cottonwood Heights site. We tore those down because they were not needed anymore. Of course, we rebuilt Midvale on a different location. Mountain View had already been closed by the previous Georgia School District. Turned those into lease agreements with the cities to put parks on those. So that's the agreement we have. We did not sell it outright at that time because we just didn't know what enrollment was going to be back in 2012. So we, wanted to make sure we still have access to the property if we ever needed to build a school. Right now, we don't see that really being an issue at either place. The need for a future, really like a school at those locations. So, we may want to look at those agreements and see what cities' plans are long-term for those. So just put that out there. So with that, that's all we have. Is there any questions, comments, or anything from the committee members, or you'd like us to look at?
This is Ryder.
First, I'd like to say thank you. We had some of these discussions actually previously in the long range planning committee with you, and Mont Millerberg's not here, but I appreciated when you started talking about the issues at Corner Canyon Fields and things, that we had a good discussion about the fact that Corner Canyon's 10 years old and that the water table issue is a real problem there on those fields. We've never been able to drain the water appropriately and adequately, and have spent a lot of time and resources trying to fix the problem, but it just wasn't done correctly to begin with, because it's kind of an issue where it's swampy and things. So anyways, I really appreciate this coming today. And I just wanted to thank you. I know you and Rick have gone and done the tours on the field with the administrators there and seen really that it really is an issue. I know we've received some emails from some soccer players today, and previous soccer players and baseball and softball players. And the issue with the fields is that we actually have teams that will not play on those fields because of the liability and injuries. And so at this point, it really is a liability for the district, as the kids, can get injured easily on those fields. So grateful for that. Something caught my eye when we're hiring the demographic firm. I think that's a very smart idea. I would also like us to look at the programs that we have available at the schools versus the capacity, because I know that our programs that really attract people, DLIs and different things, that we tend to do better with our population, those. So I think we ought to look at that formula too, of how we're attracting kids that way. So I think that's that. And then the clean feeder patterns, of course, I represent West Draper, and that's been an issue for West Draper. And I'm very interested in how we can help try to clean up some feeder patterns for those people. So thank you so much for all the work and the presentation.
We have a lot ahead of us, so
yeah. And lastly, I had some questions today. I had a Draper resident writing in saying, now wait a minute, because I posted, hey, in our study session, we're gonna be talking about a few of these things. And he said, now, are we gonna be raising taxes? So I appreciate you went over the fact that we do have land that we've had for a long time that we will not need for an elementary school. And I explained that this wouldn't be like a bond that we were passing, that we could be able to use these funds appropriately with things that we already have. So thanks for that.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Tingy? Or is it?
Sorry, I didn't know if someone else had.
I think it's you.
Okay, all right, great. So, yeah, thank you. This is really helpful information. And I think one thing that I'd like to see this summer as they take a look at each of the elementary schools and the capacities and update that information, that they also include a report on how some of those classrooms are being used, even though they're not an official class with a teacher there all day. Because I know those buildings are, those spaces in the buildings are being used, and like brain boosters, small group pullouts and intervention stuff, especially in some of the older buildings where we're seeing maybe less usage of the capacity, because those buildings don't have conference rooms, they don't have wider halls and places where a volunteer can go work with a student to help them with reading or math facts or something like that. So it's, I just think that would be helpful information to get a better picture of what's really happening in our elementary schools and with those programs. Let's see, what other comment did I have? And on the recommendations, I think it's great to hire a firm that specializes in this sort of thing, and on those agreements with Midvale City and Cottonwood Heights City, I think it would be helpful we could kind of maybe have the committee actually look at what those agreements say and bring that information back to the board. So we know what's contained in those agreements. And then I think also, as Mrs. Nybar mentioned, programs and stuff, to kind of look at what, perhaps relocating programs or things like that might do to help mitigate some of this disparity in building uses.
Thank you. Mrs. Oaks.
So I, on the committee, was part of these recommendations, so I obviously agree with these. In addition, one of the things that came up in our conversation that I do think needs to be included as part of the report board is that in some of our elementaries, because some of them have declining populations, FTE and numbers with how many teachers and how many students are in the classroom can be really different. So I think we need to get a clear picture of some of that. What are the sizes of classrooms in different places? How are we shoring up some of that? And we need to look at it from an equity lens.
Just on that, McKay, so practice has been at minimum two teachers per grade level, regardless of enrollment, right? So that's what
which means that in some schools, the classroom size is really, really, really small.
Just tearing the Band-Aid off, not saying them have a solution for it, but that's an issue.
Part of our, as we talk budget, the open meeting, not specifically, but that's part of the budget. Moving forward in March and April. How that.
Any other questions or comments?
Oh, sorry, this is another thing I just thought of too, for the soccer fields and stuff. Is that something that if some of that one-time money comes through from the state, we could use that as well?
Yeah. Charlie mentioned the one-time money. Hopefully we still get it. I think we'd get, they designated $75 million, right? This year, at least that's gross. I think we get around 7.5 of that. We would like to use 4+ to do the band room at Alta. Then we look at some other needs with that. Yeah, but yeah, I think.
Mrs. Pedersen?
Did we talk about doing the field houses simultaneously, or are you prioritizing one set? I couldn't remember if we said one or the other.
They have to be a set. We can't do one without the other. At least that's Leon Wilcox talking.
Cause I just feel like Jordan needs to have some recognition. I mean, lots of money's gone to Corner Canyon and multiple times, not saying they don't need it, but I'm just saying it has. And the other high schools as well, and Jordan has had nothing. Nothing.
I think there would be one, I foresee this as one bid, one architect firm.
And do both.
One construction bid.
Yeah.
Or same construction company to do both. I think you get.
And you also said they were pretty cost efficient to build a
You
field
get a little
house.
bit efficient, not of time, but you get a little bit efficiencies that way, but.
Yeah. Okay, just clarifying.
Mrs. Oaks and the superintendent.
And just as a clarification for that, I mean, I know we've built kind of two different types of field houses in the district, right? We have the two that are at Hillcrest and Alta that have a really beautiful overlook, and then we have the more practical one that's at Brighton. The thought is something that's more practical and more cost efficient, and I actually think probably more useful in the end.
That's our recommendation. You get into the big cost is that upper space, which is very nice. Most of you have been to Alta and Hillcrest and seen it. It's great. But it's very costly, especially with the elevator, because you have to put one in. It's a required if you're gonna, EDA, that gets very pricey right there. And just that, it's probably almost $1 million plus add-on or more to do that, so. And my favorite, as I said in the committee, I'll say here in an open meeting, is Brighton's. I think it's bigger, it's just more useful then.
Mrs. Nybar.
As we look at that, I assume we'll also talk to the principals of those schools and look at also one thought I had is I really want to make sure that what we're doing benefits a lot of students. And I'm more familiar with how many students participate in the athletics at Corner Canyon than I am at Jordan. And I absolutely believe we need to give love to Jordan and do.
I think you would attract more
You could.
students should you put money into the building.
Well, I think you need to put money into the building, but it'd be interesting just to talk to the principal too, because as we're talking about C-Tech and things, maybe Jordan would really benefit from an awesome C-Tech something there too, rather than a full, just
An idea.
just because I did look at the number of students that participate in athletics at Jordan, and it's a smaller number, and it is true you can build it and they can come, but it might be interesting just to talk to the principals too and see if there's other things that could enhance.
Superintendent.
Okay.
We better wrap it up.
Sorry, yeah, just that brought up, so when we were first starting to design to rebuild Brighton, and I had to be convinced that spending money on a field house was worth it. And what convinced me is it was not just for the athletic teams, but for every student, every PE class, every other groups could use that space as well. And that really convinced me that it was really important. So, I mean, I hear what you're saying, but I think it can benefit the Jordan community in ways in addition to their athletics.
The whole community at Brighton uses it, Little League teams, not just students, it's all the time.
Yeah.
Superintendent.
I was gonna say, does Brian have any input on the?
Field house, yeah, we actually use it for testing, believe it or not, as well. So yeah, several programs. It was utilized literally from 5:36 in the morning until 10 o'clock at night, just about every day. So it's a lot of use for sure.
It's great.
So 2 quick points. One is maximizing space for students. Tennis, some type of indoor tennis
Yes.
facility. I think across the district, all of our students would benefit. All of our high schools have great tennis teams. It's hard. My understanding is right now they really go to one location north
Yes.
of the district, if they can get there and get time.
Yes.
So I think that might be something to consider. I just want to point out too, going back to the middle school issue, it was pointed out up at Eastmont's SEC meeting that Eastmont was the one middle school that didn't benefit from our previous bonds. Now I know we did a lot of other things, but just throwing this out there as just some visionary thoughts that we talked a little bit about in long ranges. maybe the idea of creating some type of middle combination, whether it's Eastmont or Crescent or a combination with CTEC that really would give us the ability to compete head to head against Beehive. So we could develop those pathways grade 6, through 12 in aligning something in combination with CTEC and one of our middle school models. So I think in that feasibility study that will come out on what maybe some possibilities are between those two buildings. But I think this does give us an opportunity to really think big about the future and maybe what that might look like. But I think kind of going back to your point, Karen, I just want to make sure that that was brought out because that was a point that was made at the SEC meeting. So
Yes.
And one last thing, when we were talking in long range before, I also really like the idea of how some of those CTEC opportunities can also attract students, and where Jordan High does have a declining population. I know we have some really innovative, neat ideas about CTEC and a master center for CTEC. We also kind of played around with and talked about the idea of, maybe you have, 2 different types of CTEC and maybe some of it's housed somewhere else. So when we're looking at the demographic team, I would love us to look at that a little bit too, because there may be ways to attract. And I know Steve Wrigley, who used to be here, would say that all the time. I'm so worried about the drain that's coming out of Jordan. So there may be some other things we can do in addition to add programs to help bolster that population there.
That's great. Okay, thank you, Mr. Wilcox. Let's move on to our next. It sounds like everyone's okay with the committee. So I think we can move forward with that. And then let's go on with school fees.
Oh, yeah.
The fee schedule for
Well,
2023-24.
Well, Charlie alluded to this in his talk. Well, Danny, a lot of credit goes to Danny putting this together for us over the last couple. It's been out the process. So he put it together and reviewed it with me on Wednesday and Thursday last week. And on Friday, House Bill 175 passed the House. And so we came back and changed everything. So several things have been posted a couple different times here. We don't know exactly how this is going to turn out going to the legislature, especially based on the revenue estimates that came today on the funding here. So again, last year, there was a Bill 211. It didn't pass mainly because it just wasn't funded. The legislature didn't fund it. So that was picked up this year by, last year was Representative Robertson down in Provo. He has since retired from the House, and Representative Strong picked it up. And so Bill 175 passed on Friday when we were in the JLC by nearly unanimous with a few absentees there. This bill does get a one-time appropriation for FY24 of 35 million. That would be roughly 1/6 coming to us. You can see the amount of fees collected last year. So you can see that 1.6, and when you can leave out extracurricular because they can still be charged. If you look at the general and curricular fees, that's about 4 million. So you can do the math there. That's not going to cover it, this allocation coming to us. Now, last year we did reduce the general fee, basically cutting it in half. So as of today, our amount of general fee revenue is about 900,000. The principals feel good about that because they since they use the general fee to help kind of subsidize in the past these other programs, but they can't do that anymore. The program has to carry itself. So, so we did drop the general fee. The curricular fee is about the exact same amount last year. We collected this year. That does make sense because we're through the year. Extracurricular, we've collected about $2 million. But we have, instead of 3 million, we haven't had the spring sports yet. Baseball, softball, soccer, lacrosse, those other ones that we collect for there. So basically, we're gonna be, it could be in the $3 million range of fees we're collecting, but may only get subsidized back if this goes through about the 1.6. So we're gonna be, we could be short that way. Here's what 175 does, if it does go through. Again, I didn't see it on the Senate's Ed committee, so it moves to the Senate. They have their committee tomorrow. I did not, they had one today and one tomorrow. I did not see it on their agenda for tomorrow, but we'll see how, where it goes. Starting next year, per the bill, you can't charge a fee. That's just really for a list, and this is basically the list right here. That you can only charge for. You can't charge a general or registration fee next year. And you can see the definitions. Well, you can still charge for extracurricular. It does look like that will continue. The caveat in House Bill 175 is that you should get rid of this list and by 2028. So we'll have to see what comes out of this. Moving forward. So again, it eliminated the registration fee. It also eliminated concurrent enrollment in AP books, textbooks. You could use those as well. So a couple things on the fee schedule moving forward. We're recommending the aggregate remain at 5,000, same with the middle school. We don't have any students as of this point who have exceeded those. Here are some of the changes that we're recommending. Hopefully this one is not needed. And that is the supplemental kindergarten. They've been asked, the state has asked us to put this on the fee schedule. We haven't put it on the past. We've always considered it more of a tuition than a fee, but the state says no, it should be considered a fee. You can see the schools that still this year have the supplemental program. We are hoping most, if not all, as Nancy mentioned, you know, it gives full WPU, so we should have it at all. If the bill goes through, that wouldn't be, we wouldn't have supplemental anymore. So that would be that, but again, we're not, if it doesn't go through, then we're not changing the costs there. We've used that for the last 5 or 6 years. Some other fees, these are the only ones at the middle school. You know, we are proposing a $5 change to the curricular PE clothes. And some schools have a music festival at Lagoon. So this would be, you know, it's on a Saturday, right? Yeah. It's on Saturday. So it would be an extracurricular cost when they go up there and do a music festival, but they have to pay the admission into Lagoon and the transportation up there. So those are the only ones for middle schools. Again, here are some ones for the high school. Again, we could still charge for the art supplies because it is a supply next year, we think. We'd also want to add one on here for foods because the price of food has gone up from the foods classes. I think we could still charge for that one. But these other ones we'll have to look at as we move forward. But I can see the change last year. Let's say last year, this year, our proposal next year, what moving forward. The big one would be for those students who do make a CTE national conference. It's just so, you know, sometimes they go an extra day. It's just so expensive because we don't have any buying power when only 4 or 5 kids go instead of the whole team. So the plane tickets and hotel rooms, it's just more expensive than. Here's the extracurricular fees. Most of these deal, the top half deals with band and some more band competitions they have. So it would be pretty much subject to the 3 schools, mainly Alta, that have the bands or marching bands. And you can also see we put something there for the unified sports as well. Participation in, you know, and also a spare pack if kids. Some changes to the CTE fee. We didn't post those on Word docs, but a couple new programs coming in farm tech and teaching. And, you know, part of these are just because they're increased, you know, they get a certificate when they leave here, a CNA or cosmetology. Again, out in the private world, you're going to pay probably twice as much as, you know, the kids can get it for here. Part of these are for the after school teachers, you know, when the kids go to the care facilities for the CNA or the night cosmetology class, you know, so we have to bring in an hourly instructor for kids for those. So that's what's causing these fees here. Part of the fee, we always use the online fee schedule. I think you're familiar with that. We won't go through that. You see the link there. Part of it is you have to look at reviewing the spend plan. You can see the spend plans for each school. These links are live right now. So, any parent or you or any parent can see those. So with that, we didn't want to take as much time with this, but in the past, we've always sent out the proposed fee schedule to the parents. Jeff and Kirsten have done that. Don't know exactly how it will look, so we can know out what we got based on 175 not passing, which it hasn't. Well, we could wait. Again, we've always done 3 readings, so our next reading would be March 7th. Final reading with approval be March 21st. So we're a little bit of a pickle with the timeline in the legislature, but we'll do whatever we want. So that.
Just one quick comment. I was just looking at the Senate Ed Committee agenda and I did not see HB 175 on there.
Yeah, when I looked at 3 o'clock, it was.
Yeah, so I just checked now.
So I don't know, we don't know where. And with the revenue shortfall.
Yeah.
So by law, what do we have to do? Do we need to send something out right now?
By law, you have to communicate it the same way you normally communicate with parents. And that's usually through Skyalert, or we could use Parent Square, or how they normally communicate. And the second thing is you have to allow public comment for 2 big board meetings. Tonight would count as 1, and then 2 in March would also count, so we'd have 3. And then you should adopt it by April 1st. Those are really the 3 big.
So maybe send it out, or just subject to change if the law.
That's what I would probably recommend, is we can have it out there.
Yeah, because we probably need to send it out to get public comments. Okay, board, are there any questions, or can we wrap it up?
So we'll send it out and bring back comments next meeting.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so the last item for study session is discussions of indicators for strategic plan. So just so you guys know, the board, when we had a working group that set the indicators. I mean, I don't know, it's probably 7 or how long ago was it, Nancy? 7 years ago? I don't know. We had a working group and
2015, I think.
15. Yeah. So it was a while ago. And we set 5-year goals for the board of the indicators. But what happened was we did reconstitute a group and we were looking at it, and then COVID hit, and then so we still have been looking at the indicators, but right now we don't have board goals. And especially with the strategic plan, I think we need to maybe reconstitute like a working group of 3 board members and have them, because I think the superintendent has asked each strategic focus area to come up with a couple of goals, because there's probably some new goals we want to look at. And then just review, do we want to keep the other goals, indicators, what indicators do we want to add? And then I think it would be good if we set some goals again. So superintendent, do you have anything?
Well, I just emphasize, I think I mentioned this before in the state auditors audits of districts. One of the things they highlighted was the fact that canyons did have indicators, and believe it or not, very few districts actually measure against anything. So I'm really proud of that, right? The fact that we present on data a lot in board meeting, and we're always looking at data and how it can, really inform best practice and improvement. I think that's a big driver. And so in our last board meeting, as Hal presented, I think there's a lot of great data there. A few things that maybe to think about right now, for the most part, we're focused on proficiency. So you might consider growth, and we've reestablished new baselines. And so whether it's early literacy or, 8th grade math, whatever it is that we want to target, that might be something to look at. I still think graduation rate, ACT, some of the things, college readiness, there's still a lot there. But the addition with access and opportunity and human-centered supports and operations, I think that opens up a lot more. For example, attendance might be one that you want to look at. That's really an issue that we're wrestling with employee satisfaction and retention, and love that we're doing some positive and trying to engage, more of that. And then looking at student behaviors with life skills, I don't know if maybe office discipline referrals, or I know Brian's done an excellent job, looking at that. And then in along the lines of access and opportunity, we've looked a lot. Wendy's done a great job looking at honors courses, and really at the middle school level, because that's kind of a fulcrum point, for kids' trajectories and how they go on into high school. And also looking at our subpopulation, so multilingual learners, low socioeconomic, there's a lot there to process, right? And so I've asked each group to bring forward, at least maybe 2 indicators. We already have indicators that, as you mentioned, developed on the tenants. So it may be a yes and question. I think, getting too many can get unwieldy, and that becomes maybe a little more problematic. But I do think we're at a place where we can expand on that to, hold ourselves accountable and how we report out to the public on just how we're doing and are we making progress or not. And then that really helps us to program evaluate what's working and what's not, and where do we need to change course. So
Yeah, thank you.
just some thoughts.
So board, and I haven't talked to Mont about this, but I think it'd be great if 3 members wanted to be involved in it. Okay, you 3 were moved. Okay, so Mrs. Thingy, Mrs. Nybar, and Mr. Edel. Great. That'd be great. So you may not need to meet for a little bit until those.
Whatever direction we can bring those forward, as our focus area committee leads present, and then you can give us direction.
Unless you guys want to get together, start meeting. And you can start by looking at the old ones, I guess, but that would be great. Do you have any questions or any thoughts on that? Okay, well, that was easy. Thank you. Thanks for being willing to look at that. That is a really important for us to look at, so that'll be great. Okay, so I will just declare this meeting over, and we'll have about a 10-minute break. Until board meeting starting at 7 o'clock.
It's snowing too, I think.
Actually switched on.
It's snowing.
It won't be as deep as tomorrow.
No, that's great.
Got in there. Caught up. Caught up.
I will tell you guys did very well on the chart. Nice to meet you. And it's looking very good today. You're self-moderating. I did keep.
Yeah.
So Karen, you need to.
I sent them.
Sometimes it's not
Terrible, it's not the same.
even last week. You
We all, it's like a poker, very interesting.
So just be thinking about that.
Wow, look at that.
Past this.
Where is that?
No, you don't have to.
No,
It's just fairness.
It's still like, well,
I just wanted you to be aware, because you probably didn't notice. I think you were.
it kind of looks like it's trying to.
Sometimes I get going. I did it.
Not just right out here.
One, it was a little slower though.
So.
It's fine. You're not, it's not bad. It's okay.
I'm learning. Your committee already knew.
Somebody should be the possibility maybe.
Wait and see what other.
It's just, they haven't really had this.
Yes, because I know I have, it's
everyone to the business meeting of the Canyons Board of Education. Today is February 21st, 2023. We're meeting at the district office located at 9361 South, 300 East in Sandy, Utah. I would like to excuse Mr. Mont Milberg from this meeting. And the first item on the agenda is to approve the agenda for tonight. If I can have a motion to approve that agenda.
I'll make the motion to approve the agenda for tonight, February 21st. I need to read the thing.
2023. No, that's
2023.
all.
Okay,
Okay, do we have a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the agenda for today. Is there any discussion to that motion? Okay, seeing no discussion, I will ask for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion passes unanimously. And now we'll go on to the Pledge of Allegiance by Willow Springs Elementary Principal Marianne Watts.
Will you please stand and recite the Pledge of Allegiance with me? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. Now we will hear from Principal Watts about her amazing school.
Thank you. We do the Pledge of Allegiance, of course, at our school every morning. We end with that. And then I always say, have the rest of a great day. So I hope it's a little early to say it, but have the rest of a great day. Willow Springs Elementary is located in Draper, Utah, just south of Corner Canyon High School. That seems to be the landmark out there. We have, as of today, 675 students. That changes daily. We're constantly getting new students moving in and we're getting students moving out. But Leon told me earlier in the year that we are the second largest elementary in the district. I have 33 teachers, 78 staff members. I have 4 classes in kindergarten and second grade and 5 classes in all the other grades. So we are a very large school. My daughter teaches, she teaches recess at a school in Salt Lake District and they have 12 teachers. So I think their eye-popping is maybe a little easier for that principal, but I would not trade where I am. I have 2 accommodated core classrooms at our school, and that meets the needs of students with cognitive disabilities. And we have loved having those students bring that diversity into our building. I have 2 achievement coaches, instructional coaches, and I think that's because I like to hire new teachers. And so they've supported me by giving me 2 coaches. We are, as the other schools in the district, have 4 brain boosters, but our school community council voted to use some of our TSSP money to pay for a 5th brain booster since we have 5 classes in almost each grade. So we have a Beverly Taylor Sorensen arts teacher, a music teacher, PE, library, and STEM is what we added this year. And with my 4th and 5th grades at about 30 students in each class, it's really great to be able to have them all out in separate brain boosters. We also house 2 district preschools, and the preschools are also for special needs students. I've been at Willow Springs for a total of 10 years. I was the assistant principal for 1 year, and I have been principal myself for 9. We have a very active PTA and school community council. PTA made their fundraising goal, so the top reward was duct taping me to the gym wall. Every student working in pairs got to place a strip of duct tape to hold me up. It worked. When I was standing on a little stool, when they pulled the stool out, I was suspended on the wall and the students roared. They were very excited to see that work. We also had a school fundraiser that raised enough money for a shade covering over one of our playgrounds. Our fields get used a lot in the summer for lacrosse, running teams, and football. And so when the weather gets hot, our students during school and then their families in the summer use that shade and are appreciative of it. We have two more coverings on order, but apparently they are on back order. They've been ordered a year for the other playground and the kindergarten. But apparently there is a back order on playground equipment. So, but hopefully those will come. Our school sends baggy books home every day with our kindergarten through second grade students. When COVID hit, we continued that, except instead of every day, we sent 5 on Monday to be returned on Friday. So they would have a full week's worth of books. And we've continued that through this year, but we're hoping next year those little germs might be a little less and we'll be able to go back to the once book every day. Bringing it back and forth seems to really help students with that accountability, and our kids are better readers because of it. We have a 10-year partnership with Corner Canyon High School. The Corner Canyon students can sign up for a semester of elementary tutoring for 2nd, 4th, 6th, or 8th period. They come down to Willow Springs and help the teachers and students in our classrooms by working with small groups or individuals, or helping the teachers with some papers or hanging things up, but the majority of their time is spent with the students. Teachers love having the extra adult support. My students see the high school helpers as rock stars and can't wait for them to come. And you can tell that the high school students love their time spent at my school. Some of them have even come back to tell me they've gone into education as their career. So I think that's been a great partnership that started when I started at Willow Springs. It was the same year that Corner Canyon was opening, so it was a perfect time to start that. I have loved my time at Willow Springs. And one last thing, I am retiring at the end of this school year after 37 years in education. And I've had a wonderful career, and it's bittersweet to say I'm leaving, but it's time for another adventure. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Principal Watts. We really appreciate hearing from you and hearing about your school. And we would love you to pass on our thanks to your faculty for all they do for students. So thank you. So now it is time for recognitions, and I will turn the time over to Jeff Haney, Director, and Kirsten Stewart, Associate Director of Communications.
Thank you, President Schill, for the time that the board gives us during board meeting to recognize the achievements of students, faculty, and staff in the Canyon School District. Those who are mentioned tonight will receive a letter of commendation from the board and the superintendent. Our first honorees tonight made history at their high school. You see here photographs of Eva and Eliza Zimmerman. They are the first ever state champs from Hillcrest in girls wrestling. So congratulations to these two Huskies. They captured those first place titles at the 5A Utah High School Activities Association Girls Wrestling Championships. The Zimmermans, they are sisters. You can see that family resemblance. They are those inaugural winners for the Huskies. It's very exciting for Hillcrest High School. Eva won in the 100-pound category and Eliza won in the 120-pound category. Hillcrest's team ended up 6th place overall in this state competition, so congratulations to the team. It was a fantastic finish for the Hillcrest Huskies at the state wrestling championships. Corner Canyon High's boys team ended up in 4th place overall at the 6A championship, so congratulations to the Chargers as well. Now, the Brighton High Bengals continued their legacy of swimming as a prestige sport at their school. Brighton High's dynasty continued one more year. It's about as rock solid as any other legacy and tradition in Canyon School District. Nearly every year, more than a few Bengal swimmers find themselves on the podium at the end of the state meet. And 2023 did not disappoint. We had 2 first place relay teams from the Brighton boys, and they came in 2nd place overall behind Skyline. The girls team performed admirably as well, finishing the top 10, 6th place. And we have state champs in a few events. The Brighton team of Drake Doyle, Austin Partridge, Gavin Smith, and Bridget Nelson won the 200 and 400 freestyle relays. On the girls' side, Hannah Sasavarek won the top individual medal in the 200 freestyle event. But also you'll see there one of the coolest photos of the day. That's Dylan Etherington. It's the bottom right. He stole the show with the first place finish in the first ever Unified State Championship 50 free event. So congratulations to Dylan. He wasn't the only Etherington to win an award. You'll see there that Brighton's coach Todd is the 5A Coach of the Year. So congratulations to all of the Bengals who found themselves on the podium after the state swim meet. We also give a shout out to Corner Canyon High's Jordan Barlow, who earned 2 first place finishes in the state's first unified 6A state swim championships. That was held at BYU on Saturday. He took first in the 50 and 100 mixed freestyle events, and his teammate Bryce Armendariz took third in the mixed 50 free. And the students weren't the only athletes to walk away with hardware. Charger Connor Spencer won the 100 butterfly event, and the Charger boys took third overall. So congratulations to all of the Canyons District swimmers who won state awards. Our next honorees are the students who earned spots on the Utah High School Activities Association's academic all-state list for winter sports. Now, 37 seniors from Canyons District High Schools, that's Alta, Brighton, Corner Canyon, Hillcrest, and Jordan High Schools, earned the academic all-state awards for the winter sports. That includes girls and boys basketball, girls and boys wrestling, competitive cheer, drill, and boys and girls swimming. And this brings the number to 84 so far of the seniors this year who have earned academic all-state awards for excelling on the playing field at the same time they excel in the classroom. Now, for about 30 years, the High School Activities Association has given this recognition to stellar senior athletes. Academic all-state award winners have a 4.0 cumulative GPA or meet an index score that takes into account the student's grades and college entrance exam scores. A student with a 3.9 GPA, for example, would need to score a 30 or higher on the ACT in order to qualify. And if you have been a parent or a friend of a family with a student athlete, you know how much time it takes to be a student athlete. Well, they're fantastic students first. The academic all-state winners in winter sports are in competitive cheer, Avery Adamson from Corner Canyon, Brooke Barney from Corner Canyon, Audrey Kremser from Alta, Kennedy Guth from Alta, Brinley Newitt from Brighton, Cassidy Ensign from Jordan, Lily Lafata from Jordan, Macy Shaugard from Jordan. In boys swimming, Aiden Wright from Corner Canyon, Brandon Smith from Corner Canyon, Carson Spencer from Corner Canyon, Rocky Smith from Corner Canyon, Samuel Morrow from Corner Canyon, Brady Carmen from Alta, Noah Harkness from Alta, Ryan Dean from Alta, and Raymond Powers from Hillcrest. In girls swimming, Avery Hansen from Corner Canyon, Catherine Apualo, Corner Canyon, Naya Serene, Corner Canyon, Grace Hansen from Alta, Isabel Leininger from Alta, and Mercedes Cole from Brighton. In drill, Aslan Richards from Corner Canyon, boys wrestling, Quinn Bedell, Corner Canyon, Noah Martinez from Brighton. In girls wrestling, Catalina Ruiz from Corner Canyon and Lillian Watson from Brighton. In boys basketball, Cole Weiniger from Hillcrest and Zachary Weiniger from Hillcrest. In girls basketball, Brooklyn Yeomans from Corner Canyon, Caitlin Madsen from Corner Canyon, Madeline White from Corner Canyon, Janet Todd from Alta, Abigail Slamakatrin from Hillcrest, Ella Jacobson, Jordan, Corden, and Kirsten Holden from Jordan. So congratulations to the students who have achieved academic all-state for winter sports. Now, tonight is the first round of girls hoops for 5A and 6A. So good luck to Corner Canyon, Brighton, and Jordan. They all play at home. Tomorrow is the first round of the boys tournaments. Corner Canyon, Alta, Brighton, and Hillcrest are vying for those state titles. So good luck to the Hawks, the Bengals, the Chargers, the Huskies, and Diggers who qualified to compete in the state contests. Now, up next, the Superintendent Robbins has a special recognition. An announcement of the third ever assistant superintendent in Canyons District's history. The successful candidate will follow the pictures of those two fine individuals, Dr. Bob Dowdle and Dr. Catherine McCary. They were the first two assistant superintendents in Canyons history. The appointment of the new superintendent will be confirmed during the consent agenda And after the announcement, the new superintendent's photo will find itself in the history books next to Dr. Battle and Dr. McCary. Dr. Robbins?
Thank you, Jeff. So first, I'd just like to congratulate all of our candidates that were considered for the job. And I want to give a special shout out and thank you to everyone that was involved in the process. And rest assured, one thing through this process that really struck me was just how amazing our leadership is in the district. And our students and our district is in good hands in presently and going forward. And so I just want all the candidates that applied and those that interviewed, I want them to know how impressed that we were with their skills and their resumes and their body of work that they've done over time. So with that, we want to make the announcement tonight of the new assistant superintendent, which is Dr. McKay Robinson. So if McKay can come on up, his wife Dixie's here. So come on up, McKay. So I want to congratulate McKay on this appointment and proposal, and super excited to have him on board. He's been one of our elementary directors and done a fantastic job, and just not a better leader, educator, or person in the district. And so with that, I gave him a little bit of warning that he may want to say a few words. I don't know if he does or not, but I think it's important that he has the opportunity. So McKay, congratulations on this new assignment.
I believe the warning was more like, don't you dare tell a soul until later this evening. That's more what it was, which I have taken to heart, and friends and associates can attest to that. Dixie was the only one that I did make aware, but to be honest with you, ever since I met with Dr. Robbins this morning, I've been completely humbled. I've been in an absolute loss for words, and I want to echo what Dr. Robbins said, that the candidates that were considered as well are truly amazing educators, and I am honored to call them colleagues and friends, and look forward to our continued association and working closely with one another. And so I thank each and every one of you for this opportunity as well. Again, I can't express enough how humbled I am, and I look forward to the opportunity of continuing our work together, especially with the strategic plan. It's probably what I'm most excited about, is having been a part of the committees and putting everything together, that opportunity now to work with the academic team and truly push this work forward with our building administrators and teachers and educators. It's just an exciting opportunity overall. I've always viewed education as an opportunity to give back. It's never been about me. It's never been about anything other than wanting to provide the students the same thing that I was provided when I was in third grade. And I would be a complete fool not to thank Mr. Miner, my third grade teacher, for being that person for me. And it's been a true honor and privilege to continue to provide that for students. And I look forward to broadening that scope now. And this opportunity working with Dr. Robbins and all of you. But again, I'm truly humbled. I obviously have to thank my wife as well. She's put up with a ton of phone calls late into the evening from my principals and the different people I've worked with. And I love each and every one of them. They're amazing educators like Mary Ann. I don't even want to call you Mrs. Watts. She's a truly amazing person. And I'm grateful for that association and for the amazing people in our buildings. So thank you. It's snowing. I'm going to keep this short. So thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity and look forward to working and helping the work move forward. So thanks.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Robinson. We are very excited, and I want to offer my congratulations, and we are excited to work with you in your new capacity. So thank you. Okay, now is time for patron comments. I'm going to start by reading a statement. The board often designates time in meetings to listen to the patrons of the district. Patron comment time is limited to residents and taxpayers of Canyon's district, students and parents of students, and current employees of the district. Patrons may provide board members with written comments or documents rather. These documents must be submitted to the board secretary at the meeting or emailed to the Office of Public Communications applications by noon of the following day of the board meeting. And our secretary's right over there. Tonight, individuals will be given 3 minutes. Those representing groups will be given 5 minutes. Comments made during patron comment are part of the public record. It is the board's practice to listen and take notes during patron comments. The Board of Education does not discuss matters that are not on the meeting's agenda, nor engage in public comment on individual students to protect their privacy or employee issues. If a patron wants to comment on the district's employees' character, professional competence, or mental or physical health, the board requests that those comments be submitted to the board in writing. However, if the patron determines to verbally comment on those personnel issues, the comments need to be civil and refrain from personal attacks, insults, defamatory, or slanderous comments about an individual. The Board of Education would like to make it clear that critical race theory is not part of the curriculum being used by Canyon School District. There are no plans to incorporate it into the curriculum or instruction in Canyon schools. The Board of Education values input on all sides of issues. To maintain decorum and respect, we ask that those in attendance refrain from applause or other types of demonstrations during the patron comment time, as well as throughout the meeting. Okay, so our first patron that has signed up is Amanda McConnell. So if she could come up, and then we have one other comment that is going to be remote.
Hi, everybody. My name is Amanda McConnell, and I'm the Vice President for the Canyons ESP Association. I'm here speaking to you today to asking you to consider the ESPs of our district as we go into negotiation season. Teachers are the heart of our district, and we love our teachers. The governor has made it clear that our teachers will be receiving a substantial raise this year. I would like you to consider the rest of us. If teachers are our district's heart, I would implore you to see that ESPs are the backbone. Without the heart, the body does not survive, and without the spine, the body cannot thrive. We have witnessed time and again the effects that staffing issues have on our students. We have seen the mass burnout in every job family of our ESPs. These burnouts and staffing issues are majorly impacting our teachers. We have a symbiotic relationship, and both job groups need our support and school districts' acknowledgement and financial support. Every one of our employees deserves to make a livable wage. Right now in Salt Lake County, $12 to $15 an hour is not a livable wage. There is a reason we cannot find quality employees. There is a reason we cannot retain employees and lose them to companies that pay more and take care of their employees better. I implore you to please keep in mind the entire district as you discuss salary raises this year. This economy has been hard on our entire employee family. The decisions you make over the next several weeks could make all the difference to the lives of our ESPs.
Thank you very much. Okay, our next patron to comment is Kirby Croyle, and they have not joined the meeting. Okay, maybe they did send us an email, so thank you. I guess we will just proceed with the meeting. Sorry, we'll just proceed with the meeting. So our next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. And I would ask that a motion be made and that all the items are read that are on the consent agenda.
I will make that motion. I move that we approve the consent agenda items, which are item 7A, approval of minutes from February 7th, 2023. 7B, approval of hire and termination reports. 7C, approval of purchasing bids. 7D, approval of student overnight travel. 7E, approval of January financial reports. 7F, approval of school community council updates. 7G, approval of Copperview Comprehensive School Improvement, CSI Plan. 7H, approval of amendment with Cottonwood Heights Recreation Center Service Area Interlocal Agreement. And 7I, approval of administrative appointments.
Okay, thank you for reading that. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that motion.
Okay, thank you. Is there any discussion to the motion? Okay, seeing no discussion, I will call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion passes unanimously. Now we will go on to new business. And item A is strategic plan focus group report on human-centered supports by Dr. Brian McGill, Director of Student Services.
First off, President Shield, I wanted to congratulate Dr. Robinson. He completed the same program that I completed at the U, so go Utes. Anyways, happy to call him a colleague and now my boss. So in the Human Centered Supports Group, which President Shield is a part of, as well as Andrew and Karen, we've had the opportunity of meeting a few times to date. And our focal points are focused on life skills curriculum. I've got some slides in here on student health data, increasing behavioral supports in schools, which we know is a strong need right now, increasing wellness supports in our schools for students, and then also increasing wellness supports for employees across the board. And Dr. Robbins asked me to keep this brief tonight because the only thing standing between you guys and the rest of us is a snowstorm and myself. So I'm going to keep this really brief. I think pretty much everybody is aware on the board of our Thrive Skills Development. I've had the opportunity to present on behalf of this a good part of all of last year and January. Just to highlight a couple of things, schools can begin the field test implementation. One of the things that Amber and I were really excited about is we have 28 elementary schools that are on board and all of our middle schools who are planning to participate. The ultimate goals of that obviously are to build and sustain a positive culture and climate in schools, create and sustain a safe environment for learning, support our teachers with behaviors, increase motivation and engagement across the board, and of course, align with our strategic plan and the portrait of a graduate. We had the opportunity, a few of us, to attend a National School Response and Safety Conference. Shared some of this data with the Human Centered Supports Group. One of the things that really stuck out to me is the concern that 30% of all of our students report feeling depressed since the pandemic, and that they report feeling disconnected from their peers, community, and the school setting. One of the great things walking away from that conference is the CSTAG, which is our threat assessment process that we put into practice the last couple of years, was highlighted as the best practice. So it just reiterated and reinforced the great work that Canyons has put forward in best practices. And then I've included some indicators for ensuring safe and inclusionary schools, which life skills is a part of that as well. Just a few slides on student health. It's broken up into 4 different categories. So we've got substance use, social emotional behavior, culture and climate in schools, and then looking at health risk as it relates to our students in schools. With regards to substance use, it does increase with age. But overall use is down from 17 and 19, which is great to see. On the flip side of that, vaping, probably to no surprise to anyone, has been on the rise since the pandemic. And we're currently looking at some online modules for vape cessation and working with our schools for prevention and education programs. As we know, that's a huge, huge need across the board. As it relates to social emotional health, again, depression significantly up. And then just to highlight a couple of things, again, to no surprise, kids are spending a lot of online time with their media, which is having a correlational effect on their sleep. One of the interesting things there is our students in Canyons are actually getting less sleep than the state average, which obviously is a concern. And then physical activity and perception of overall health has decreased since the pandemic as well, which could be intertwining with mental health. Community and school climate safety, just a couple things to point out there. The perceived importance of school is down significantly since the pandemic. This has been a major topic of focus. In fact, we spent a good portion of our MTSS meeting this morning talking about solutions towards this. And we also feel that attendance reflects this perception that our students are feeling. And so we're actually going to be conducting a student survey to get some qualitative responses so we can respond to the needs of kids. What are they thinking? What are they feeling? Why are they not attending school? How much are they missing school? And being able to provide that survey data to all of our students across the district so we can look at it from multiple different viewpoints. And then our instructional supports team, again, a big part of our MTSS conversation is just getting our teachers back to that re-engagement, the best practices in the classroom, so that kids are wanting to come and feel the value in what they're learning overall. Community and school climate, a couple things to point out there. The positive school environment has remained steady in schools, which is great. That's actually a celebration, I think, for all of us, our teachers in particular and our educators, that students are feeling safe at school. They feel like there's somebody that they can connect with at school, which is important. And then educators praising students has also remained steady since the pandemic itself as well, which is great to see. As we look at risk factors, just a couple of things to point out. Again, that low commitment to school and the reflection on attendance that we're seeing. We actually met as a policy committee on Friday, taking a look at the attendance policy currently in the district, and we'll be re-reviewing that at our next meeting. So we're looking at ways to counterbalance accountability for students, but also upholding positive rewards and positive behavior for students that are attending school as well. So that trying to balance that pendulum on both sides. And then perceived school improvement or school involvement and rewards are up as well. So again, our teachers, our staff are rewarding kids for the positive behaviors that they're seeing in schools. Safe UT, which is our state reporting utility. I just wanted to show some trend lines there. The suicide is the one that's one of the highest. We had 3 calls that came in late night last week. I was on the phone with parents from Hillcrest, Albion, and Draper Park to late hours of the night. And then you can see the trends there with bullying. Cyberbullying is actually up. Bullying is down, physical bullying. And then the mental health and depression. So look, again, just looking at trend line data across the board. Our use is down a little bit with Safe UT. And I think a part of that has to do with the pandemic itself. And again, retraining, re-educating, informing kids that they can actually utilize this app to connect with a counselor. And so we've done a lot of outreach in response to that. In fact, Jeff and I have had some conversations on how we can bolster that advertisement for that utility, which it's literally saving lives. Our nurses are an important piece to the puzzle as well as it relates to health. I'm not going to go through all of those, but just wanted to highlight the Tier 1 vision screening. So you can see they've done over 20,000 students. The number of active healthcare plans, just over 800. And a new assignment to school nurses is auditory screening. So they're going to be taking that on as of this year. And the projected number there is close to 16,000 that they'll be serving. So just a shout out to our school nurses. They do a tremendous job. And a lot of times we talk about mental health, but we know that physical health and mental health, like I said, are intertwined. And so we never want to lose sight of that or the efforts or the work of our school nurses. Priority 2 is part of the HCS group, is looking at tiered systems. We're really excited. We pulled all of our specialists together last week. It was literally, I think Nate, myself, Wendy, and Amber were all really excited about just what's to come with this, because we're collaborating as 4 departments across the board and trying to provide the best services to our schools. And so what we're looking to do is we're using the tiered fidelity inventory to evaluate all of our schools' MTSS models at all 3 tiers. And we've set up interviews as administrators from each of our departments with all of our principals in the district. And we're planning to utilize the research and development and data that comes out of that for our June leadership training for our principals this summer. This will also allow us to look at things at a local school level, but also aggregately looking at trends and where we can provide stronger supports from our specialists and from our administrators here back to the schools. Increasing wellness supports for students is our priority 3. We know that we've got a loss of ESSER fundings coming up, which is going to impact our area pretty significantly. And we've been asked to do some reduction as well. So we're looking at working with some of our secondary schools with school coverage and land trust and TSSA, just because they have more funding than our elementaries. Looking at doing some grant reconfiguration, so sliding people under grant-based funding and adding to that with grant-based funding as much as possible. Attrition, but this will potentially have an impact to our strategic plan as it relates to wellness supports for students. Our principals, when I've had conversations with them as we've been out and about, we're getting a lot of positive feedback with regards to the social workers and the supports that they have in the schools. And they, with student connection, achievement, and just an overall positive culture and climate in their schools, which is great to hear. Priority 3 is wellness supports for employees. This is really Steve Diamond's expertise. And so moving forward, he and I are actually going to collaborate and build an agenda so that he can present out on this instead of me leading, because he's really the expert as it relates to our HR supports here in the district. But just a few things I wanted to highlight. We've opened gyms for employees. We've obviously added the additional time allocations for teachers in the schools. Request for ESP employment satisfaction survey. I know it's something that Steve is working on. That request has been made. And then obviously the board employee appreciation and recognition that President Schill introduced to us. Excited to see where that goes as well in terms of appreciation and recognition, which we can never do enough of. And then just lastly, looking at this slide here, I won't go in depth on it, but Dr. Robbins asked us to look at our priorities, what measurables that we can look to use to quantify our efforts as it relates to each of those priorities. And then programs, training, support, resources that we may need to add, edit, change, adjust as it relates back to those priority efforts with human-centered supports. So my ideal vision is to come up with a visual conceptual framework of what this looks like for Canyon School District so we can share that with all of our stakeholders. Questions?
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Oaks, then Mr. Edel, then Mrs. Nyla. Down the line.
Okay, Brian, I don't want you to think that I am not valuing your presentation, but I'm going to have a slight detour for a minute in light of the weather. I actually we're getting reports of how extreme the roads are right now, and it's not looking good, and people are going to need a lot of extra time to get home. So I'd like to make a motion to move up item C, which is the 2023-2024 budget update, to item B, and move the current item B, which is the district case management team secondary proposal, to a future board meeting so that we can all get home. So, but that I'm not cutting short the discussion, and I will have further comments.
Wellness and safety for employees, which is
Wellness and safety,
tied into
you're
the
right.
presentation directly.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, so we have a motion to move up item C to item B, and then to postpone item B, which is the DCMT proposal. And we have a second to that motion. So any discussion to that motion? Okay, no discussion. So I will call for a vote on that motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that vote is unanimous. So we'll finish with this and then go on to the budget discussion. But I think we have some questions. So Mr. Edel and then Mrs. Nybar.
Yeah, so my biggest question is, what do we as a board, and I don't know who can answer this, but what do we need to do to get it started so that we can get the ESP survey out? This was talked about with the previous board. This was talked about in our committee meeting, and it seems like the answer keeps being, it needs to start. We need to get that started. What do we need to do to get that started so we can get a better picture as to what's happening with our ESPs, because we know it's not good right now.
Well, being over student services, Steve Diamond, do you want to speak to that?
The climate surveys have been under the direction of the board underneath the round table, I believe is what it was called. So I believe it is just
The climate or the satisfaction surveys?
Well,
it's kind of the same thing.
the same, but for ESPs, which we
But a
haven't done
specific
before.
one, yeah, we haven't done that one before, yes.
So I would concur with,
Is it something we can direct as a board, or is it something we need a motion for? Can we get started?
Yeah, I don't think we need a motion.
I don't think it needs to
We
be a
just
motion,
provide
just some
direction.
direction to the administration.
Okay, the board, are we all okay with moving
Yes.
forward with that?
Yeah.
Okay. looks
Thank
like
you.
Everyone is in favor. So superintendent, we would love you to get working on that. Okay, thank you, Mr. Diamond.
Okay, and Mrs. Nybar has a question for Mr.
I
McGill,
just-
I think.
Just a comment. Dr. McGill, how long have you been in the position of student responsive services? Now,
Little over a year.
a little over a year.
Yep.
I just wanted to thank you for the extensive amount of work you've spent in this last little over a year developing Thrive, as well as this huge undertaking of the human-centered supports in the midst of BJ Weller that had the accident and all the heavy lifting that you had to do for that. There's so much work that goes into this. The program that was developed through the parents and the chair, department heads, and yourself that's called Thrive. I just think this is a great example of an individual that's thrived with so many responsibilities that we've given you. So I just want to say thank you because I know with the weather, and you just gave a very extensive report. And with that extensive report is an inordinate amount of time that you've dedicated. And I really appreciate not only the amount of time, but the passion you bring to this. And one thing that I'm excited about is when we were meeting in our committee meeting and your emphasis and focus of keeping students engaged in their learning and how that relates to the attendance issues and the training you did with the principals. So I'm grateful that you've just so recently been fresh out of Alta High and have such a heartbeat kind of on what's going on in our high schools too. So I just wanted to say thank you. I know there's a snowstorm, but that I just wanted to make sure that you were recognized for all that amount of work and as well as all the people, that have helped you with that. So
Yeah, I appreciate it, Holly. And yeah, I mean, Amber's group and my team collectively together, and a lot of specialists from other departments collaborated on this project. And, I think the board called it a Herculean task. We're not quite all the way there, but we're pretty close. And I feel, feel very proud of the work that's been done collectively. So thank you.
Okay, any other discussion board? Mrs. Tingy?
Thank you for the presentation, the amazing work as has been mentioned. So earlier in our study session, we talked about gathering up some suggestions for some indicators and some targets and things like that. So I really appreciate that part of this report where you've already done that work and you've put forward some suggestions. So thank you for doing that.
Appreciate that. Thanks, Ms. Tingy.
Okay, it looks like, I think there's no more questions. So thank you so much for your presentation
Thanks,
and we look
sure.
forward to more work on that committee, from that committee. So,
Sounds good. Thank you.
okay, now we're going to go on to item B, 2023-2024 budget update. Leon Wilcox, Business Administrator.
Thank you, President Schill. We'll try to get through this quickly due to the weather. Again, just as we start to develop next year's budget, just going through some issues that we're going to face. Again, focus on the strategic plan as we move out. We're going to use the term work out from the students. Rick and I are soundly against any increase in class sizes at all. That's not an option for us. And we know we need to look at any WPU increase, not to backfill budget deficits, but to try to keep our employees whole going forward with inflationary purposes, for inflation that they're facing here. We don't want to look at just straight across the board cuts. We want to look at various factors that we've been looking at in the last year. See a list of those there. We went over this actually in November, so these are just pulled over from that. Moving forward, again, I want to just commend Amy Boyger here tonight for all the work that she's done on working with Canyons Online. She's actually going to rebrand it Canyons Virtual Academy. So that's coming up. I think that's great for her. You can see these are our enrollments on K through 5 grades. There's 60 of them as of last week. One of the things that we've also noticed is that we're actually below benchmark in these areas for our students than our brick and mortar schools. And we've also noticed some engagement on it, during the class time as we try to teach synchronous there. So again, as an administration, our proposal moving forward is this, that we move Canyons Online, or rebrand it Canyons Virtual Academy, thanks to Amy and her team, moving that from a K-12 model to a 4 through 12 model, okay? Teachers, all teachers who work on Canyons Online today would be involuntary transferred according to our policy. They will still have a job to how they choose to accept it, but it will be back in person. However, we will hire what we call 4 success coaches, mostly out of this pool, we think, but it would be open to any employees. These coaches will service all grades to 4 through 12. We will still have a coach and a counselor position. We have those this year. They will remain. Is our proposal. Grades 4 and 5 will be parent-led by and supported by the success coaches. The middle schools will start hiring adjunct teachers similar to the high schools. So they will still teach the core classes, mainly the core classes, with a few electives thrown in there. Not much really changes at all, except with the high school. They will still be all adjunct as it was before we had the Canyons Online the last couple of years. But, we've had Canyons on, we call it CBHS, been in place for about a decade now. We look at our budget contraction moving forward as, most of the online is paid out of our ESSERS funding. This will save us 11 licensed positions, 2 ESP positions. Moving forward. So, again, thank you to Amy with that. So, we'll move forward to another topic, maybe address all these, and then you can come back if there's any questions at the end. So moving on, we've talked about the ESSER cliff, if you will. Right now, we're paying about 56 employees out of ESSERs. You can see them there, listed there. And it costs about $4.5 million in salary and benefits. Right now, we've done some work and we've equaled out the dollar amount. Not quite the employee amount, but the dollar amount, which is one I'm more concerned with how we looked moving forward. So these have been difficult cuts. These are tough because it does impact services and what we can deliver in all areas here. So it can go down. There's 2 in IT, a couple in transportation. If bus breaks down, we're going to have 1 less mechanic there as we move forward. We're opening up some cybersecurity without our director of tech. So all these have impacts. We will, right now the bottom, I guess 3 would be 4, I guess, the secondary health assistants are at our secondary schools. We're going to have to, we've told the principals there will need to pull those if they still want that position into their TSSP plans, land trusted TSSA. Then we've also given instructional supports 10 FTEs that we'll need to reduce there over the next 2 years. And same with Brian, he highlighted that as well as the online. So that's our plan moving forward to try to get to that point where we need to be on budget reduction, equal that out. Some additional factors, again, we're paying about 15 FTEs out of ESSER funds. We're going to have to work with the school to try to get them in that allocation, but that's going to be difficult because we have, we talked a little bit about class size and interventions and everything dealing with that. A couple other things we're looking at is using our ESSER funds, working with Gretchen to buy a big batch of library books and then reduce the ongoing allocation to schools. That will save us about 110, we think, going forward in the next few years. Working with Nate, we're running 68 special ed routes. We're hoping to reduce those by 10 over the next couple of years. They all won't be next year, but that's, as we look at IEP plans, can some of our ACC students ride a regular ed bus? We think they can and be fine that way. So work writing those into plans. Again, that's a 2 or 3 year process, so to work through that. And then, part of the EdAppropriate's budget was to increase online at-risk students. We'll look at, we expect if that whole 51 million gets allocated or awarded by the legislature, that would be about 2.3 to us, hoping we can use some of that to shore up some of these backfill positions here. So as we, again, there's other things that we'll move forward and discuss at later times. I want to just talk about and bring this up right here. When we had a legislative lunch, we put out some of the increased cost of inflation. And so we gave that to our legislators based on what the certified tax rate does. Again, the certified tax rate, no inflationary factor. All it is new growth, new properties coming onto the payrolls. There's no inflationary factor in that. So from last time we did our truth in taxation, the FY20 year, till the FY23, our new growth has gone for the three levies that comprise the certified tax rate has gone up $5 million, basically 5%. And so I want to just briefly show some of the costs, how they've inflated, how those inflation factors have gone in some of our positions from that point up to now. So you can see what a new first year teacher cost. We were, I think Park City beat us to 50,000, but we were the next, right? And now we're up to that 54.6. Again, that's a $4,600 increase, but a 9.3% over the last 3 years. See what our bus driver, first year bus driver makes, first year custodian makes. They're under that 15, 16 range. A brain booster with a degree, again, up 20%. Again, these are needed positions. We're trying to fill them with our labor shortage. A big one is our health insurance claims. We use in education and in insurance all kinds of acronyms. The most common one is PEPM, per employee per month cost on claims. So I want to look, our insurance goes plan is on a calendar year basis. So I want to look at the previous year before COVID, because that COVID did impact what our PEPM was, and it was $956 in 2019, that calendar year. In 22, year we just ended, it gone up to just under 1,200. So you can see almost a 25% increase in insurance claims. That's big there. Here are some other costs, maintenance parts, just in our maintenance department, our fuel cost. Again, I looked at FY20, of course, that's COVID year. We shut down in March. We spent 882, but as of end of January, we were already 920, expecting to be in that $1.7 million range when it's all said and done. You can see the costs there almost doubled with fuel prices. Fortunately, we're pretty much done building new schools, but we still have lots of needs. As we talk field houses and everything, those costs have gone up exponentially as well. So, I can see costs about 40% on new construction. This is a big one. Again, the very bottom one, that's just probably hit your own fuel bills. From January of last year to January of this year, you can see what a decatherm of heat costs us, up 28% in our schools. That's just a 1 year increase. So you can see what costs are. We're going to have a very difficult time. And matter of fact, there's a very good chance we're not going to break even this year, meaning our expenses will exceed our revenues, meaning we'll dip it into our fund balance this year because of all these inflationary costs. We do have a good fund balance, but you can't go to that often. And there's other things that we bought, Parent Square, which has been great. New Zealand, we used to offset that by a textbook fee, some of that by a textbook fee that we can no longer charge. So this year we are paying that whole thing. Fee waivers, that's how much we had in fee waivers last year. Kind of on track to get the same this year. And whether or not we hit the fee schedule, whether or not that's going to fund it all, probably not. We're probably going to be a little bit short there. The transportation platform, is 141,000. This CARP of UCSI, 390,000. So all these costs that are so needed, but bounding up on us. So that's why I'm just going to put this out there right now. Again, we have a few months and a time to talk about our budget, but I am going to put out there a possible tax increase, knowing that we have to, with no inflationary factor and certified tax rate, you do have to go out and capture that inflation every 4 to 6 years. It'll be 4 years since our last one, right? Just using numbers here, okay? If we were to just generate $5 million to cover all these inflationary costs, and as we move into negotiations, what we need to give our employees, this is how these rates would look. Again, still early in the process till we get all the information from the state and the county. But it's important to also note that the basic rate, which, the state had froze for 5 years, is going away, that freeze. And so that's going to drop down this year. So you can see there that top line, it was 1650 the last couple of years. Right now, and I'm using Senate Bill 1, the base budget, it's 14. Could change. There are two other bills out there that actually have it lower, but that is, they haven't really moved much. But you can see what I would propose is adjusting our board levy there without the tax increase on the far right, or my far right, and then with the tax increase, the blue there. How that looks to our patrons on their tax statements. Important to realize that, again, generating the $5 million. Keep in mind, there will be 3 lines they see on their property tax statement. That second line there, you can see the basic levy drop. So the first column there, again, if it stays at that 14, and again, I also want to emphasize I'm using the average home value because homes have seemed to stabilize in price, right? So I'm using the exact same home value last year to this year. That's going to change for everybody, but overall, they seem to have stabilized in price. Last year on the basic rate, they would have paid $590. This year, they'll pay about $500, so about a $90 savings there. And then with the other rates pulled in with some new growth and our bond being able to reduce that down, you can see there a taxpayer overall, if we, on the average tax, average home, if we increased it by $52.48, that would bring us in the $5 million. That taxpayer, it should be noted, down there in the little box there in the black outline, with no increase, they'll save about $118. If we do the $52 increase, they will still have about a $66 savings with that, okay? Again, that's different, going to be different, spread out. But I just want to put that out there because the basic rate's going off, overall, they're still paying less taxes to the school district. I don't know what cities and counties and the county will do. They can still see they would pay $2,095 with this tax increase, whereas last year they paid, $2,160, about a $65, $66 difference there. So I'm just putting that out there. We can talk more about that as we get closer. But I do feel like as your business administrator with the inflation, what they are, we have to look at that. 3 of our neighbors in Salt Lake County raised taxes last year. Us and Murray were the only 2 who did not. The other 3 did. So that's an issue that we have. So with that, leave it at that. Our time is short, but if there are any questions, comments.
Okay, board, are there questions? Mr. Edel?
So I want to say that less frequent, larger tax stabilization efforts are really difficult for people. So when it goes a long period of time before we stabilize the tax rate, and that's really what we have to do is we have to stabilize the tax rate, that hits people a lot harder than if there's a gradual change. And so that's something we need to keep in mind as we look at this. I also want to point out how important it is that we remain competitive with our salaries. Our employees can't continue to work 50 to 60 hours a week. We have to make sure that we have competitive wages. And while it would be great if the state would properly fund our education system, I think that we have a duty to ensure that we take care of our people here. And that's one of the things, as well as to ensure that our Title I schools are taken care of, as our students that need the most support shouldn't have the newest teachers. So these are just some things to keep in mind as we have these hard discussions. moving forward, these hard discussions among the board, these hard discussions with our constituents, these hard discussions with all stakeholders.
Yeah, and I also, very good comment. Thank you, Mr. Ed. I also want to mention, you can see there, $5,050 average house gives you about $5 million. You know, so you can extrapolate that down a little bit, you know, so $40 roughly, give or take, gives you $4 million. $60, give or take, give you $6 million. So basically $10 for every $1 million you generate on the average home. It's correct. Look at it that way as well. So.
Okay, Mrs. Tingy.
Thank you. Just really quick here. Thank you for providing all this information of the inflationary increases. I think that's very, very, yes, it's sobering. I know for me, I've mentioned to a lot of people how we don't have built-in inflation adjustments and even, you know, the state did do a built-in inflation adjustment for the WPU and it's what, 3.5% or something like that. And I get it because it's on a rolling 5-year average, but this is really, it's sobering and stunning. And I think it's good information to have out there for our public so they understand the realities of what we're facing.
And as you mentioned, that CPI is based on what they call core CPI. It excludes two things that have been highly impacted, which is food and fuel. So they are taken out of that WPU increase.
Okay, are there any other comments? Mrs. Pedersen?
If there is no increase of monies coming in and we don't do the tax increase, are we going to be able to meet the commitments that we've already committed, you know, things that we've committed to already?
Well, every year we go through a negotiation process
Right.
with our employees. And so
Yes, I know that.
that's,
Well,
you know.
and I know that the
so
teachers and the public are going to want to know where's that $6,000 that the legislature said they were giving to all the teachers.
And it's important, it's important to note that that is actually $4,200,
I know.
right? In their gross.
Right.
And that will be different for everyone.
Sure.
But it's $4,200. The other $1,800, which is actually not that much. It's about $1,400 pays insurance. I mean, retirement and FICA costs. So
Yeah.
the benefit piece.
Well, I think it's important that we state that because I think parents or the community or even our teachers think that that full amount's going to come in and that never happens.
Never
know,
does.
Our checks don't work that way.
And yeah, you're exactly right. And keep in mind, as I go back to the insurance claim cost, that there's nothing built in on that for insurance, health insurance claims. So yeah.
Mrs. Nybar?
I too am grateful for the information you gave regarding the inflation and what that means for us specifically. I also just wanted to echo what Mr. Eddles said. I definitely believe that with everything that's happening for people, we've talked about this before, but the value of their home almost seems like an artificial thing for people who aren't moving or selling their home. And so, you know, you and I and Miss Oaks met with some concerned
Absolutely.
constituents about what was going on with their taxes. And although that isn't going to be renewed this session, and, you know, we know where that responsibility really lied with assessment, but I do think it is just very important that we keep in mind that, you know, that the things we do are gradual and that it's not breaking anyone's back. So that's also important to consider, especially it's very difficult for people to be mobile at this time too. And, you know, if there was a huge increase in stabilization, there may be people that would feel like they could no longer afford to live in the home they've lived in for 20 years. So something to consider too.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Oaks?
Thanks, Leanne. Do you love being the bearer of bad news? It's so fun for you.
Oh.
Yeah, that's why you have to come up with jokes, right? Balance it out. Yeah, the inflationary personnel costs, I knew they were high. I had no idea how high these were. And this is really insightful for me when I'm having conversations with legislators. And I would hope anyone who's listening to us, who's one of the 13 people who get on every board meeting or more, that they take these as screenshots and have communications with their legislators. Some of the dialogue and the rhetoric up on Capitol Hill seems to be functioning in a little bit of a vacuum where they assume that a 6% WPU increase is adequate. This doesn't come anywhere close. It doesn't even, it's the tip of the iceberg. And it's not a function of us being money grubbing. It's a function of us trying to keep our doors open and maintain basic quality education. I've already sent these screenshots to Charlie and Susan. I think any of us who have opportunities or the ability to communicate with our legislators, we need to be doing that more aggressively. This is, anyway, I just can't even believe it. Over 20% consistently on so many of these, over 40%, over 80%. It's mind blowing. And, you know, I absolutely agree with Ms. Nybar about the importance of being sensitive to older people, especially who have a fixed income and property taxes. The other part of that, though, is, and someone in our USBA meeting brought this up the other day, we tout ourselves as a state who focuses so much on the state of our economy and that we're the strongest economy in the nation. But we also need to be known as a state that provides high quality education. And your home is only worth so much if the quality of your schools is not great. So anyway, I appreciate you ripping off the Band-Aid. It's helpful for us to see it. I hope that the public is paying attention. We are not trying to gouge anyone. We really are trying just to keep the lights on and keep things moving forward and making sure that those in our buildings are being taken care of and that that's sustainable too. So.
Okay, thank you. I would like to just say a few comments. So last time when we went out and raised taxes, it was for a very specific purpose. It was for the teacher pay raises. And I think we could really justify that. So I just think if we do this tax increase, we need to make sure that we communicate clearly that it's for inflation and maybe show some of these numbers to our public because I mean, they need to understand what we're facing. I mean, and I think they're facing it too, just as they go to the grocery store. So I think that could be important. I mean, there are districts that raise taxes every single year, just like a little bit, but we've never really done that. And so anyway, it's something for us to consider. Are there any other comments? Mrs. Nybar?
Sorry, one other comment with our presentation for long range planning and study session. I do think at this point in time, it is very important to be very thoughtful about some of those schools that are underpopulated and looking to see what we can do as far as consolidating our resources, because we can generate income in other ways to our district as well as we look at demographics and things like that and how the birth rate is affecting things and the youth wave population moving. You know, for quite some time, it's been moving down to the west part of Salt Lake, Harriman, and Saratoga Springs and those things. And so with that, we do need to be very mindful and responsible as far as doing what we can to consolidate our costs and you know, a thriving school community is best with a thriving population at the school building as well. And so I do think that also needs to be something we heavily consider. So.
Okay, thank you. So I think that's all for the budget update. So board, would you consider us postponing board comments, or do we all want to say them tonight, or are we okay for next time? Okay, then the superintendent just needs to make one announcement.
Just, it's already gone public, but we will be moving to a remote learning day tomorrow. And just please, everyone out there, be safe on the roads. The roads are treacherous, getting all kinds of feedback that cars are all over the roads and are very dangerous. So be safe out there and stay warm. And hopefully with enough notice, our teachers and staff can be ready for tomorrow.
Okay, thank you, superintendent and board. I think we've finished our business, so I will call this meeting to a close. Thank you. No, you, I know for sure you can. I know, yeah, for sure, I can just, yeah, I know for sure that's okay, but I don't know about.
I'll go back and look at emails.
Well, no, I have some stuff on closed. I mean, I have stuff, I have like multiple books on Robert.
I
Burns,
know,
so I
and
can
there's
look
so
it up.
much. When they talked about it, bought my little. We really don't know. That's big time.
I mean, I will look it up.
I know, I was like, I think our board functions fine.
Yeah.
I didn't know if it was gonna be like.